I was hired to clear out the grounds of an ancient mansion, hidden behind a fortress of overgrown greenery that hadn't been touched in decades. The sprawling estate was choked with tangled vines, towering weeds, and trees whose branches clawed at the mansion's crumbling walls. The owners were preparing to sell it and wanted the place to look presentable, though it was clear they hadn't set foot there in years. The air was thick with humidity that clung to my skin, and the buzz of insects was deafening. As I began hacking through the undergrowth, I felt something strange, a pressure in the air, like the world was holding its breath. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow darting between the bushes, too small to be a person, too fast to be an animal. The air was thick with humidity that clung to my skin, and the buzz of insects was deafening. As I began hacking through the undergrowth, I felt something strange, a pressure in the air, like the world was holding its breath. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow darting between the bushes, too small to be a person, too fast to be an animal. I froze, squinting through the foliage. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of it, hunched, frail, its limbs bent at unnatural angles. It vanished into the thicket before I could fully process what I'd seen. My pulse quickened, a trick of the light, I muttered, shaking it off. But as I returned to my work, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then the voices began, faint at first, soft whispers carried by the wind. But as I strained to listen, they grew distinct. Laughter, low murmurs, a melody, mournful and hollow, like someone humming a tune long forgotten. They seemed to come from the mansion itself. My curiosity got the better of me. Leaving my tools behind, I made my way to the house. The mansion loomed like a decayed skeleton, its windows clouded with grime. Peering through one of them, I saw something that froze me in place. Inside, the grand ballroom was filled with people. At least, they looked like people moving in a grotesque parody of a dance. Their clothes were ancient, moth-eaten rags hanging from bodies in various states of decay. Some were little more than skeletons, their empty eye sockets locked onto unseen partners. Others had waxy, grayish skin stretched over bones, their faces split into unnatural grins. They swayed and spun to a soundless tune, their movements jerky and wrong. A cold dread gripped me. My breath fogged the glass as I stepped back, heart hammering in my chest. Before I could make sense of it, I heard the crunch of footsteps behind me. I spun around. Standing on the far side of the garden was a man, another gardener, or so it seemed. He was dressed in tattered overalls and wore a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow. Something about him was off. He moved stiffly, his motions unnaturally deliberate. As I approached to ask who he was, the details of his figure came into focus. His right arm ended in jagged bone, no flesh or muscle in sight. Yet he wielded a rusted scythe as if nothing was amiss. Panic overtook me. I dropped my tools and bolted for the gate. When I reached the entrance, the mansion's owners were waiting. They seemed startled to see me in such a state, but when I told them what I'd seen, their reactions chilled me to the core. The woman sighed heavily. "You're not the first," she said. "We've hired 4 gardeners before you. None of them lasted a day. One ran off and never came back. The others." She hesitated, glancing at her husband. "What?" I pressed, my voice shaking. "They never left the grounds," the man finished grimly. "We've seen them, in the garden, working, just like you described." I stared at them, horrified. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "We've tried selling this place, but no one stays long enough to fix it up. It's like the house keeps them." Before I could respond, a deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath my feet. The owners stiffened, their faces draining of color. "Yo," the woman whispered. "Leave now, and don't look back." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran to my truck, started the engine, and sped down the overgrown driveway. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw the gardener again, standing motionless at the edge of the property. He raised his scythe, and for a brief moment, I could swear he waved. I never return to the mansion, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear faint whispers outside my window, and when I dream, I see the garden those grotesque figures moving in silent rhythm, their hollow eyes locked onto me. Last week, I found a rusted scythe leaning against my porch.
Check out my playlist for more scary stories. See you next week.